You are listening to ReconnectingTHEdot podcast, and I'm your host, Abdurrahman Anifoshe. Once again, I want to engage and empower you to become the best version of yourself through this podcast, and I hope it benefits you. Take a listen to this week's episode and let me know what you think. Alright, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Welcome to another week's episode of ReconnectingTHEdot podcast. And I am your host, Abdurrahman. And this is episode 20. And this is actually going to be an exclusive episode, which is the Meet the Huffadz. And I have with me on the show today, I have two wonderful individuals, which I have the pleasure to introduce them. I have Hafidz Abdullah Olakokon and Hafidz Fatima Abidogu. Before we proceed, how are you doing today, Fatima and
I'm doing great, alhamdulillah. How are you doing yourself?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing very fine. It's good to have you on the show. And yourself, Abdullah?
Assalamu alaikum. I am doing well, alhamdulillah. It's a pleasure to be on this amazing podcast.
Thank you. It's good to have you back again, because I know you were previously on one of the segments I brought you on. So inshallah, before we proceed, I want to also use this opportunity to give thanks to Almighty Allah for keeping you on high and every one of our viewers and listeners till date, because it's indeed a blessing for us to all be here today. And I really do appreciate all of your critical feedbacks and all of the comments. They're really encouraging, and I really thank all of my listeners and viewers and subscribers. So without further ado, today inshallah we will be exploring the journey and the memorization of the Quran, to be precise. This show is about individuals who have been privileged and have been blessed by Allah's mercy to have to memorize the Quran, and which is the reason why I had dedicated this segment for that. So let me start with you, Abdullah. So we all know that the Quran is a noble book and a guide for us, for every Muslims. So can you tell me and tell all of our listeners about your first day of the memorization? How does it start?
So, okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So actually, my first day of memorization, I cannot particularly remember that, but I do remember my first day of the Hafidz journey. The reason why I do not remember my first day of memorization is because I've been memorizing since I was at least 3 or 4 years old, memorizing small surahs like Surah Nas, Falaq, and those short surahs in Juz Amma. But when my parents decided it was time for me to go to Hifz school at Masjid Mu'mineen, I do remember it was on Surah Najm actually, and it was the first page, and I had memorized one page before coming to class. I just got into class, I revised it, made sure it was perfect so I could read to the teacher, and and I was feeling proud of myself. I was like, wow, I thought I had accomplished something great there. And then and I see people around me memorizing 3+ pages, revising 20 pages in one day, and I'm like, wow, I haven't even begun. I haven't even done anything. And it was really amazing. It was like an eye-opener. It was like, wow, this is the journey that lies ahead. So that's what I remember of my day of memorization.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So Hafidz Fatima, So, what does a day looks like for you, in terms of you starting to memorize the Quran? You know, what was the challenges you faced, and how did you also start, your journey, in the memorization of the Quran?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. For me, similarly to Hafidh Abdullah, I started when I was really young, around
Mm.
that kindergarten 3-year-old phase. That's when I started picking up some of the easier surahs, Fatiha, things like that. And as I grew older, I went to school when I was living overseas. I went to school that was a Hifz school, and so it was part of, like, we did that alongside our academics. And as time went on, when I came to America, I went to Iman Academy, and there wasn't exactly like a established Hifz program. So a lot of the Hifz I had to do at that time was at home with my mom, and with my parents, pretty much going to things like TTY, which was our Saturday school we had at Masjid Mu'mineen.
Right.
And as time went on, I also then went to a newer school which had a Hifz program before my parents decided to go ahead and take me to the Mu'mineen Hifz program. And I just remember, since I had a sibling, my elder brother had actually been to the Mu'mineen Hifz program before me. And I just remember all the stories he used to tell me about how many pages they were doing for revision and pages they were doing for memorization, and how everyone was like really serious about the Quran. And so prior to going, I was actually pretty nervous because before this time, I don't think I had ever sat down in one sitting and revised like 5 pages and just read it to someone. So it was pretty shocking to me how easily they were like discussing how many pages and how much content of the Quran they were doing at one time. So it was intriguing and allowed me to be nerve-wracked at the same time. But as far as a day during my Huffadz time, as far as that goes, I want to say the day started off really early. We woke up, prayed Fajr, and right after that, probably had like breakfast, and we were heading to Masjid Mu'mineen. So I remember the morning ride to the masjid was very critical for me and my siblings, because that time was a time you probably got in the best revision that you would get before you read your lesson to your teacher. So that time was extremely critical just because it helped a lot. And then throughout the day, we would continue memorizing and revising, and then do academics later at night.
Alhamdulillah. So, this is a follow-up question for you and for Hafiz Abdullah and Hafiz Fatima. So the follow-up question is that let me start with Fatima. So I know you mentioned now that you also obviously started at the early stage of your life to start to memorize like the little surahs and the ones you could know and all that. And I know you actually mentioned something about before you moved to America. So would you say that? So where were you before you know coming to America and to actually continue that journey or that pathway that put you on that path to actually becoming after the Quran? So like, were you somewhere? Were you what part of the world were you before you came to the US to continue?
Right. So before I came to America, I actually lived in Saudi Arabia. I was actually born there.
In South Africa. Okay.
Yes, I was actually born in Saudi Arabia, and I moved to America when I was about 7, 8 years old.
Okay.
And
Mashallah.
so the entire time I was there, alhamdulillah, as we all know, Saudi is an Islamic
Yeah.
country, very surrounded and very influenced by the Quran. And so, but even prior to this, I want to say that the main thing that pushed me towards, getting close to the Quran and memorizing the Quran was my mother, because even before I even went to Quran schools or Hifz schools in Saudi or anything of the sort, my mom was already teaching me whatever Quran she knew, all the Quran she knew when I was a kid. And so, like, from then on, that's when I began to, that's when my mom began to put me in, those Hafidz Quran schools, and tried to get me to, better my Quran, tajweed, and things of the sort. But I would say that my mom's love for the Quran really was what inspired me and what gave me this opportunity.
That's very good. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. That's Hafiz Abdullah. So I know you were, for a long time you were in Cairo, right? And sometimes I do have conversations with friends, families. As a matter of fact, there's a cousin of mine in New Jersey. Because I love Hafidh Quran and I love Hafidh Quran. I mean, those who actually have memorized Quran, I love them for the sake of Allah. And I always, each time I see, those that have memorized the Quran, I'm always super happy and super, super energized to actually want to listen to them, and as a result of all of this passion, I did encourage my cousin to actually enroll our kids, in school to go memorize the Quran. I mean, I just did it somehow. I encouraged them. Alhamdulillah, today they actually, completed, the memorization of the Quran. So now, alhamdulillah. So that question to you now, Hafidh Abdullah, is, I know you were in Cairo for a long time. All right. So at what point do you have to go to Cairo, or can you explain like the different kind of stages that anyone that has to embark on that journey would do? Because the question that always comes to mind, I mean, when I have conversations sometimes, like, okay, how then do they juggle with academic school and going to memorize the Quran? How does this part of it work? So I wanted to share more light on that.
Okay. It's actually funny because I've never actually thought about explaining my story in stages, but that is actually what I'm going to do now.
Alhamdulillah.
So obviously the first stage is your parents motivating you from a young age, just as Hafidh Fatima said, like, just your parents teaching you what they know, and just putting the love of the Quran in your heart, just reading those small surahs. And obviously enrolling me I went to many Quran schools, as Fatima did too, growing up, like Iman Academy and Noor School, etc. But I feel like the major step that led me to start memorizing very seriously was obviously enrolling me at Masjid al-Mu'mineen during TTH.
MashaAllah.
And during my first few months there, I remember I was progressing, but it wasn't that much of a difference towards what I had been doing at other schools. And I think when I reflect on it, it's mainly because at that moment I hadn't taken ownership. My mom likes to say that phrase. I didn't take ownership of what I was doing. I was just doing it because I was told to do it. And it's like, it's my new school, but I wasn't taking ownership of it. And I can remember it was like around after I finished like 6 or 7 juz, 8 juz. And one day I just got home. I don't know what had changed. My dad claims it's because he went to Hajj and he went to make dua for me. And that's what my teacher says too.
Okay.
But I remember one day I just went home and I went to my parents' room and I just started memorizing, like, seriously, like, because before then I would do half a page, 3/4 of a page. I just sat down for like an hour and I memorized a page. I was like, wow, I can actually do this. I was so proud of myself.
Oh.
So I remember from that point on, everything just increased exponentially. Like I was just memorizing a lot. Like I could memorize 2 pages in one day, and
Hmm.
that I remember it went like that for a while, and I memorized around 10 to 13 juz in the Muminin program. Um, I had finished
Oh,
memorizing
okay.
13 juz with the Masjid Muminin program, and at that point my parents were also thinking of different ways to elevate my relationship with the Quran. So they decided to actually send me to Egypt, even though I'd already finished 20 juz of the Quran with one teacher. So sending
Okay.
me to Egypt,
Wow.
it wasn't for the memorization benefits. That's what I like to believe. It was more to get closer to the Quran, improve my tajweed, improve my Arabic, learn more about the relationship between the hadiths and the Quran, and just learn more about Islam in general. So
Alhamdulillah.
I actually completed the Quran in Egypt, where I I like I said, I improved my tajweed. Um, I learned Arabic to some extent, and
Right.
and in general, I just feel like Egypt also played a big role in me being able to love the Quran. I remember in Egypt, although I was already passionate for the Quran before I left for Egypt, it also grew to another level. Like I would stay up in the middle of the night memorizing so that I could
MashaAllah.
achieve my goal, and that's something that I wouldn't really do in America.
Hmm.
So obviously changing your environment helps you
Helps you
um
to
I,
achieve more.
yes, to achieve more.
God, alhamdulillah.
Yes, sir.
So there's something actually missing. Maybe half the Fatima will be able to talk about that. So like, so how do you then strike the balance between your academic year of school and the Quran, the memorizing, because the memorizing of the Quran, it takes a lot of commitment, concentration, and focus, and so as the academic as well. So, and of course, at the end of the day, I know that parents want their children or their kids to be academically educated, okay, to be academically sound, and also to have the Quranic education as well. So I want you to talk about that, half of the Fatima. So like, how do
Mm-hmm.
you strike the balance? Like, so how does it work? Do you have to take time off from your academic, from your school, and then focus dedicated, or you just focus on the memorizing of the Quran? So how would that happen?
I would actually say that you can actually do both at the same time.
Okay.
When I was in TTH, the Teach Them Hifz program at Mashmumineen, we
Right.
actually did our morning classes. Our morning classes were Quran. We did from the morning to around Dhuhr time. And after Dhuhr, so let's say maybe Maghrib, Asrish, we did our academics. So we had, most of us did, we were all enrolled in like homeschool programs. And there we actually had someone from our community that would help us and tutor us with our instructions and our schoolwork. And looking back at my Hifz journey and all the schools that I went to learn the Quran, every single school or institution that I went to learn and memorize the Quran, I was doing my academics alongside of that memorization. So I would never say that your Quran will hinder your education in any way. Sure,
Right.
you do have to have a new sense of responsibility, which is something that you will grow to have after you've done this or for a couple years. But I would say that doing them both is 100% possible, and that the Quran, rather than even hindering your academics, will help you improve, because as you're memorizing your Quran, you're gaining so many skills. You're
Absolutely.
gaining, memorization
Absolutely.
skills.
Absolutely.
You're also at times learning the translation, and it in turn will improve your studying and allow you to even at sometimes focus better. So I do think that it's definitely possible to do them both at the same time.
Yeah, just to add on to what she said.
Okay.
When I, like she said, at the Mu'mineen Hifz program,
Right.
that's when I started homeschooling, and
Okay.
really, like she said, it doesn't hinder you. It actually helps you move forward. I can remember the older kids at the Hifz program. They received honors. They were smarter than they got better test scores than people in the state, in the city. Myself, I had never been that much focused, accomplishing that much work at a time. And unlike Fatima, though, there was a time where when I said when I went to Egypt, it was purely Quran, Arabic, and Islam. And I did not do any academics for 6 months. But when I came home, it was very easy to catch up. It was just half of 7th grade. I spent like 2 to 3 weeks catching up. As she said, you develop a new sense of responsibility. You don't want to lag behind, and it's very easy to do, and it's doable. Everything is doable. You just have to put your mind to it and pray to Allah to make it easy.
So tell me, so at what point do you then, learn about the Hadith? So because I know you actually mentioned about also memorizing the Hadith, and also learning about the Hadith as well. So is he at the point where you complete the memorization of the Quran and then you move to the face? So is it in phases, or how does it work exactly? So because I know it's the Quran, it's a different ball game on its own, right? And the Hadith is another different aspect, which all encompassing. It's all knowledge to actually help the Quranic orientation or education that has been obtained or gained. So I just wanted to explain better to the audience, so they can probably understand, okay, at what stage do you memorize the Quran, and at what stage do you then move to phase of either memorizing the Hadith or learning about the Hadith? So how does these two work together?
So I would say it's actually an ongoing thing. Obviously,
side by side?
Yeah, it's side by side.
Okay.
Obviously, you have to know the basics. Being able to read Arabic, and when you're mature enough, you can start. Well, not even as a child, from my young ages, even before I went to Hifz program, I would know some very popular hadiths like لا يؤمن أحدكم قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب الأخي ما يحب لنفسه. Like those type of hadiths that you'll not love, no one has believed until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. Those hadiths, you learn them as a child in your Islamic schools. And as you're memorizing the Quran, you'll be seeing ayahs that accompany this hadith, or reflect this hadith being practiced, or just in general, it's something you do. It's not you do one then you do the other. It's just how much time you put into both. So yes. And a companion once asked the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they should describe the character of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Aisha said that he's a walking Quran. That I'm paraphrasing. I'm not sure exactly how it went, but I'm paraphrasing.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
You're right.
Walking Quran. So these stories, this hadith, not from the Prophet, but these stories let you know how the Quran and the hadith are related to each other.
Are related
and
to
the
each other.
hadith
Absolutely.
helps
Yes.
explain the Quran a lot.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Fatima, so you want to add something to that?
Yes, I actually do. Yeah, so I definitely do agree with Abdullah that, for example, some of those earlier hadiths that we learn, a lot of them we learn in our Islamic schools. Some of them we picked from our mothers. Things like, eat with your right hand. Ya ghulam samillah wa kul bi yaminik wa kul mimma yalik. Those small hadiths we've already picked. A lot of us had picked up a lot of those, prior to even starting on our Hafidz journey, right?
Right.
But I do think that, at the same time, after we memorized, at least for me, Mumin also had a Huffadz program. This was like a post-Huffadz program where we would come into the masjid, let's say like twice a week on the weekends, and we would have fiqh classes where we would discuss lots of ahadith, where we would do more of that Islamic studies. Some of the things that we weren't necessarily focused on, essentially, while we were memorizing.
Okay.
And so, even furthermore, we had Ramadan programs, so we did the tafsir of the Quran. And I think personally that tafsir is extremely, extremely important, because you can memorize as much of the Quran as possible, but what's really important is being able to apply it in your life. As Abdullah mentioned prior, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's character was that of the Quran. And so, as people who memorize the Quran, it's also kind of our duty to essentially understand it, learn the tafsir, and be able to apply it in our lifetime. I believe there was a story of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that one of the Sahabas of the Prophet, it would take him very long, like months, to memorize an ayah, because they did not move on from that area of the Quran until they had applied it into their lives. And I feel like that's extremely important, because the hadith, the teachings of the Prophet, all of that ties into, being a student of knowledge. And with that in mind, I feel like, learning the hadith is an ongoing journey, because at times, you just research something about Islam. It's like, oh, I'm curious about this topic, and you learn a new hadith right there. So I do feel like that, in that sense, that area of gaining knowledge is, almost like endless. And it's just something we have to do continuously and consistently to be able to, apply it seamlessly into our lives.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. This is really beautiful. This is really, really a wonderful journey. And honestly, I must commend you both, because the Quran is not something you can just pick up and just read and then you just drop. You have to. It's about commitment. It's about the love for the book. It's about the commitment and in the intention for the sake of Allah. And I pray that Allah continue to make it easy for you and make it easy for me too.
Ameen.
So I have one or two more questions before we end this segment. So what is required to become Hafidh and Hafidh al-Quran?
I'll go first.
Okay.
In my opinion, thing you need prior to become a Hafidh al-Quran is you just need the mindset. And even if you don't have the mindset right now, if your mindset is not 100%, let me just tell you that mindset will build up. For example, lots of children, a lot of us get started on memorizing the Quran when we're really young. And so at that moment in our lives, we can't say 100% we had the mindset and we're like, oh yeah, I'm within this many days, this many years, this many weeks, I'm going to be done with memorizing the Quran. I'm going to do this. A lot of that mindset and a lot of that goal-oriented thinking comes after memorizing for a couple of years. You memorize for a couple of years, you see your peers around you memorizing, and that in itself starts to motivate you to go forward. So the only thing that's required is honestly the heart to do it, because it's honestly a thing that anyone can accomplish. Having memorized Quran for so long, when you're in that feeble younger age, a lot of times you're like, oh my God, when am I gonna get to the end? When am I gonna memorize the Quran? A lot of times you don't picture it yet. And
True.
And for people who are just starting out, that might be the case for you, but that doesn't mean anything. It's extremely doable if you put your heart to it. And the Quran is it's almost that type of thing where as the more you do it, the much better you get at it. When I started memorizing at like a North school, I remember we were memorizing like half a page was too much for me. We were memorizing like 5 lines a day, and it would take us like maybe like in a week we would finish memorizing maybe like 2 pages or a page and a half. And then by the time I got to TTH, around the ending of my memorizing, I was memorizing 3 pages a day. Like 3 pages in comparison to 5 lines, it's a very big gap. And we were doing revision, 20 pages, things like that. But we did not get there in a day. And I think that's the most important lesson that everyone needs to learn. It's that as you memorize the Quran, you will improve systematically as long as you put your heart to it. At the beginning, you might not feel like, oh, I can get to the end. But the Quran, subhanAllah, is that type of thing that as you start, you get so much closer to the end and you get there faster as well. So I do think that anyone with the mindset, anyone that wants to do it, can do it with the help of Allah and dedication.
Alhamdulillah, inshallah. So, Hafidh Abdullah, over to you. Abdullah? Abdullah? So Fatima, so at what age did you complete the memorization of the Quran?
By the grace of Allah, I was able to complete the memorization of the Quran when I was 12 years old.
12 years old. MashaAllah. Wow. Alhamdulillah. 12 years old. And what does it feel like to complete the memorization of the Quran at 12?
I feel like a lot of the credit was honestly to my parents, because Alhamdulillah, and my teachers, and my siblings, Alhamdulillah, because I feel like without those people around me, there was no way I could have made it. Because, for example, when you're memorizing the Quran, there's always those times when you're like almost like you're stuck. Correct. I remember, like, for example, it might be just like, a lesson that's a lesson that you just can't get into your head, and so you just kind of like, I'm just gonna leave it for later. But having my parents there looking over me and telling me, oh no, you're gonna get this to the bottom of this today, and essentially being there to say, oh no, every single day you must read your Quran. And just those types of reminders and those types of and that type of encouragement surrounding me enabled me essentially to be more proactive with my memorization and kind of take hold of it. And at the same time, having teachers that would say, oh, Fatima, today you didn't memorize as much as I would have wanted you to. And having those expectations to fill, and those people to also encourage me and teach me to improve my recitation, enabled me to do things that I initially never thought I would be able to do, starting off with my memorization. So I do think that I owe them a lot of it, alhamdulillah. And also having my elder siblings who had also completed the Quran in the same age range, it was a big motivation for me because I always thought they were like looking down on me and kind of like watching me, and so like I always felt like, oh, let me kind of get to their level. So alhamdulillah,
Yeah.
they're a great person.
That's really good. Alhamdulillah.
So,
Yeah, go ahead, Abdullah.
So, like, just to add on to what she said, actually, the motivation for the Quran actually comes from so many things. Like she said, even responding to the previous question about like how the friendly competition amongst each other, when your friends are passing you, you see your friends memorizing, you see the older people finishing the Quran, you see the big parties, the big walimas. It's really an inspiration, because at first you're like, oh, I want to finish the Quran, but you never have the mindset to actually do it. You're just going with the flow. But then as you're memorizing for months, years, you start seeing yourself calculating, oh, if I do one page every day, subtracting the weekends, I can finish by this date. And it's just so funny how you see yourself progress forward. And like even your parents, your grandparents, the people in the community that know you're memorizing, all that is a big boosting. It plays a big role in motivating you
to continue to do it.
Yes, so I would say all those. Yeah.
That's very good. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to what Abdullah said about the community, and I want to say a really big motivator was the fact that whenever someone memorized the Quran in our community, it was a community event. The whole entire community celebrated.
Yes,
One
absolutely.
of our kids has made it, and I just remember even like during some of our like elder siblings walimas, people at the walimas would turn around to all of us and say, so when is your walima happening? When are you going on stage next?
Yes.
And so you're always like, I have to do it. I have to get there. So
That's true. Even when my friend, actually, Fatima's younger brother, coming to me like, Abdullah, when are you going to finish? It's just, and it's not like to make you feel bad, as a source of motivation.
Just to motivate you.
Even sibling rivalry is a thing. Like I can still remember going to TTH with Abdullah and Fatima, and they would be competing with each other. It was all that is like, it plays a big factor in like, oh, you're like, wow, this is so interesting. Let me also try and do my best so that I can.
Right. Okay, inshallah. I mean, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. I'm really so happy. You know, it is indeed a journey for you both, and I really pray that Allah continue to preserve the Quran knowledge in you, and continue to count you worthy of those that will continue to be in Allah's remembrance. And myself, I pray for myself and my family as well. So just one more question, and then we are done with this segment, inshallah. So what advice do you have for potential Hafidz and Hafidh al-Quran?
So I will start first. So first of all, I would like to advise the parents, and I would like to commend you first, Uncle Abdurrahman, like what you did in convincing your cousin, sorry, I was trying to your cousin to send their children to Quran school. Definitely I would say, for the parents and the uncles and the aunts out there that want their children to memorize, focus on education, but in the early stages it's easy for children to pick up stuff. So also know that there's a time limit on how much they can focus on the Quran, like more than 60%, 70%. So try and strike within that time range. That would be anywhere from 5 years old to like 18 years old. And that range is very critical if they want to memorize early and be able to apply it. But I would also
Absolutely.
say that for those who have not memorized before the age of 18, it's never too late. You can still, there are people who have finished the Quran after 70 years old. It's never ever too late. Now, for the children who their parents are motivating them, and for those who just want to memorize and their parents are not motivating them, I would, like Fatima said earlier, it's all about your heart, your determination. You may not know how it's going to go when you're starting, but as you start doing it little by little, you're gonna get the hang of it, and inshallah, you'll see yourself moving at a rate you never imagined, and one day you'll finish. So it's easy, like we're just saying it now, and it sounds like, oh, we're just saying it, but the journey is real. You start one day, and you have to keep motivating yourself. People around you, make sure that they're helping you, and at the end of the day, inshallah, one day you'll finish.
Inshallah. Okay. Fatima, you want to add anything before we?
Yeah, just really quick, my advice would be, no matter what, just be consistent. So as memorizing the Quran, it might at some times or along the way, you might, get stuck somewhere, right? And a lot of times what happens in those times, people will stop memorizing altogether. And my advice to you all is, no matter how small it is, memorize every day. Stay consistent with it. Don't let a day go by without, going ahead and picking up that memorization. Because I feel like a small amount of dedication just like that would be one that would multiply eventually, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yes.
Inshallah.
Yeah, I just want to add one more little thing to that. Definitely push through those tough moments. That's why I said motivate yourself and surround yourself with people who do motivate you, because those nights where you don't feel like memorizing, they're going to come, and you have to fight through it if you want to continue. And absolutely, like Fatima said, Fatima said earlier that she started with 5 lines. I was starting with I don't even know how many lines, but I remember when I first started my memorization journey, I was doing half a page. So it's like half a page. Eventually, when you do it for a couple of months, it's going to be too easy for you, and you're going to move on. You're going to want to do more. So stay consistent, start small, and at the end, maybe you can be doing 3-4 pages a day.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan to both of you for acceptance to come on the show. I really do appreciate you both, and I love you both for the sake of Allah. And I pray that Allah continue to preserve the Quran in you. And listeners out there, Hafidz and Hafidh Fatima and Hafidh Abdullah, they have been able to share their journey and the experiences they have been through in terms of memorizing Quran. And one thing I'm actually, taking from here, one of the learning points are for parents out there who are, kind of considering their kids or their children to want to memorize the Quran. Please pay attention to your kids at the early age of their lives. Provide them with the necessary support system, consistency, commitment, and all in all, it's all about being intentional. And pray to Allah. May Allah make it easy and guide us aright. Abdullah, Fatima, thank you again for coming on the show. Inshallah, I will definitely bring you back on the show for many more other series of this segment, Meet the Huffadz. I am your host, Abdul Rahman, for the ReconnectingTHEdot podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and I will definitely see you next time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for listening to ReconnectingTHEdot podcast with your host, Abdul Rahman. If you're yet to subscribe to this podcast, please do so and follow me on Instagram, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube channel. And remember to always strive to become the best version of you. Thank you and bye-bye.